I include the Clam Digger Saloon and another one later because that's one of them, kind of thing. They got some light humor involved. I try to sprinkle that in there, but I feel like they're gritty, very real, and you know, get there's frailty, there's love, there's hate, there's broken hearts, there's successes, and all the things that life brings on our doorstep.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm Morgan McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today a super special guest who is launching a brand new book. Now, if you like stories of people who are broken and yet going for nobility, wanting to be noble people who are doing amazing things in the world, and especially who have the stories around being soldiers, warriors, war vets, this book is going to be for you. So this book is called the Chianti Chronicles. It's volume 1, fictional tales of Vietnam vets. And I have with us today to talk about the book, the author himself, who spent 27 years in the Air Force. He's a retired Air Force veteran and more than 20 years in business, working for General Motors after that. And so comes with a whole slew of stories and perspectives, and really wanting to honor those vets who have fought for our freedom. And I am so honored to bring Mr. Kevin Cullen on to talk to us. Kevin, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate it. That was a great intro. And in summary, I'm very old after what you just said. 27 years, 20 years. That's good. Good stuff.
Wise, wise and full of stories. And so this is kind of a curated collection of stories that you have been honing over the years. And I'd love for you to give us a little bit of insight, like maybe tease up one of the stories for us, Kevin. What kind of stories do we have in this collection?
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, they're pretty diverse. There's not like a trend. Perhaps some partial trends, but the stories are uniquely different. I'm really, I think the storylines, I'm thrilled with those, but I really pride myself on trying to build a good character and some really cool, intriguing dialogue. So, I grew up on Long Island, New York. It's on the Great South Bay, man. I was right on the thing. I should say Long Island, but I lost the accent a little bit. But I live in Delaware now after retiring. My wife and I settled there, but there's so much in my DNA from Long Island. So the story is about, it's set on Long Island, and I created a fictional bar called the Clam Digger Saloon. and there's so many facsimiles of that there. I've enjoyed a couple of adult beverages in my late teen years, and many of these back in the day. But the title of the story rather is Slow Dancing at the Clam Digger Saloon. And it's really just the story of this young guy who just fascinating character, big, physically strong, good-looking guy, athletic, blah, blah, blah. But man, life just, nothing worked out in terms of his parents. I won't give the whole story away, but he grew up disadvantaged, clearly disadvantaged. And he just falls for this girl in high school. I kind of started back as high school sweethearts and it progresses, that he just seems ill-fated. They fall for each other. They have a great relationship. He gets into a violent situation, and then back in the day, many a person had the Monty Hall, let's make a deal, door number 1 or door number 2. Go see the judge or go see a recruiter, like by Wednesday, and have a signed commitment. So that happened to him. And then Vietnam comes into the picture. So these two young lovers, if you will, just can't seem to get it going, man. Although they have these fascinating moments. He goes away for a year, and then I'll tease this. While he's gone, he said, "Look, when he left, he said, forget about me. I'm gone. I'm probably not going to come back. Blah blah blah." So while he was gone, every month she'd write him a letter. They used to, believe it or not, get hard letters to them back in that day, and on the bottom she would write, "Slow dancing at the Clam Digger Saloon," because they had the fondest memories there, the intimacy of it. And he never read them. And he comes back, and then life takes a bunch of twists and turns. I won't give up the ending, but he does eventually read the letters, and they're pretty cool. So yeah, that's one of them right there. And I include the Clam Digger Saloon and another one later because that's one of them, kind of thing, you know. They got some light humor involved. I try to sprinkle that in there, but I feel like the gritty, very real, and you know, get there's frailty, there's love, there's hate, there's broken hearts, there's successes, and all the things that life brings on our doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, that was a perfect sort of like, tee up, really tease of one of the stories. And you've already, even in that brief preview, have given us insights into like the characters that you're creating. Yes, they're based on people that you've met or fought with or have been, have come to know as veterans. And they're fictionalized. And so you're able to really bring in this depth of character, create these twists and turns and journeys and kind of these very short, compact stories. And in fact, you and I were chatting before we hit record, and we're talking about how some of these stories kind of, are a little bit reminiscent of like Kurt Vonnegut or Flannery O'Connor, where yes, they're hitting on themes that are quite dark even, or raw human emotions, and yet you don't lose that sense of hope in these stories, and really honor as what I feel when I read through these stories, like really honoring the you said, broken and tragic and traumatic journeys that so many of these soldiers have been on, and still trying to live life, to the best of your ability, trying to, find that partner to fall in love with and make a life with when you've been through these war situations, and even what it's like over in the war. And, one of the stories talks about Agent Orange, for instance. And it's like some of these stories, like, even though they are fictionalized, they are telling these like human truths of what so many people have lived, even if they don't talk about it. I think that's one of the difficult parts about being a vet, is like, how do I even talk about what I've experienced? And the civilian world just doesn't know. I'm curious, Kevin, like, how has this helped you in writing these stories? I mean, some of these stories probably hit very close to home for you. Has this helped you in your conversations with family and friends?
It has. It has. Yeah, there's a lot of me in it. I particularly proud of, there's another one where it's a night in a bar, a snowy night in a Long Island bar. And this guy storms in, and he's actually, I jokingly call him a vulgarity virtuoso. He spews vulgarities, and he gets into it with a woman, and they wound up kind of later getting together, if you will. But um, and he's intervening in a conflict that the young lady's having. It's going to be physical, and it's going to be violent. They basically got snowed in, and they were going to have a confrontation next morning. And then I just talked about how he dug deep in. I said, GIs, we have a kind of a place in the back, like a black box where we kind of stash stuff and try to keep it in there. It's permeable, but it's back there. And sometimes you just got to, it comes out, you got to kind of deal with that. They're not crazy. It's just that PTSD is a very powerful thing. I certainly include that. Some of these characters have experienced that, and it's affected their life from, in some cases, their 19-year-old right on into their 70s. It still kind of helps, works there. But again, it's not all morbid, but it's just saying, you almost like, why doesn't this guy just get up and run? Well, because it kind of bogs you down sometimes. It hinders relationships, the passions that they're seeking. Sometimes there's one where this guy is just madly in love with this girl that he can't have, man. She's just, in his mind, out of a league. Had he properly pursued her and maybe put aside some of those ghosts of the past, he could have had that. So yeah, it's I'm proud of that part of it. Yeah, a lot of experiences I've had, plus that I've talked to with other people. I've crossed paths with a whole lot of Vietnam vets. If I'm at a diner, I always buy their breakfast. I shake their hand, I salute them. They're amazing, and they weren't the best treated, man. They came back, and as we all know, that was it wasn't their fault, but just based on the political miscalculations and the things we learned after the fact, they were mistreated. I hope now those who survived and walk around with those hats, those old guys walking around, they were badasses one day at one time, so they deserve a lot of. I actually was going to call it an homage to Vietnam vets, but that sounded too like I was trying to be too. I'm not a sophisticated man, so I just stuck with fictional tales of Vietnam vets.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And you're right. I mean, I think the fictionalizing of it of these tales has both helped you to be able to do more of the storytelling. You are a storyteller, Kevin, and so it gives you that license to really tell these fleshed out stories. And it still gives us, who are maybe civilians, insights into what it was really like for them in a way that most people probably wouldn't feel comfortable telling the true story. And so you're kind of bridging this gap for us, and you're bringing us into these moments in time that are based in real experiences, and we can kind of come and meet some of these Vietnam vets in those moments, and maybe have a little bit more compassion, understanding, and really honor what they've been through
No doubt. Yeah, it was cathartic. Certainly, it was a bit cathartic for me. I actually, one experience I had, it's when I first wrote it, I just had a friend of my sister's give me a rough edit, and that's the one story. She goes, it doesn't fit in there, but I've adapted it with a lot of the help of your team. But just to give you a quick taste, I had I'm one of 8 kids, one of 5 brothers. I'm the second brother. My younger brother was a gay man, and back in the day, right? He's younger than me, but he got AIDS and died. And I was in the service, and me and my brother had the task. We attended the funeral, stood by my mother while she buried one of her children, and then they live on Long Island. He lived in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. The story is called "The Goddess of Prospect Park Loves Lilies." And me and him had the dubious task of going out and cleaning out his apartment, cleaning up his affairs. So I completely fictionalized that. Really proud of that story, and it's going to be really important to my family, that we pay tribute to my brother Sean. Although I made it two Irish feisty twin sisters instead of me and my brother to add a little fun to it. But yeah, I guess anytime you're thinking through stories, right, your own personal experiences kind of sneak in there.
Yeah.
But it's really cool, and it feels so good to do it, man. It really does feel so good.
So how did you go about the writing of these stories? Because you have a lot of stories. How did you kind of go about kind of like curating, selecting the stories, and really kind of like rounding them out and getting them ready for the book?
Yeah, my 8th grade teacher, I'm a 12-year Catholic school veteran. That's part of my
Another type of battle
yeah.
survived.
Another sense of urgency for my therapist, if you will. I don't have a therapist, but I used to like to write as a kid, and she told me, when you get an adult, particularly a seemingly mean nun, we graduate 8th grade, we go to high school, and she just said, Kevin, can I talk to you? She goes, you seem to really enjoy writing, and you write good. That was very good to me. It was like a coach saying, hey, you're a good hitter, or whatever the case is. And I, just kind of thought about that. I used to do little ditties, I little scribble out stuff, and lost them. And then when I was in the service, I started scribbling out stories. I joined the service in '73. So I was in a dorm, and I have these little goofy stories that I kept on paper that later I got, when the computer started to come in, I actually started just transferring them and keeping them on Peach Text. I don't know if you remember Peach Text, and then, so I had a lot there. But the way I go about a story is I call them an acorn. I get an acorn. Like I have 4 grandkids, and I've played catch with every one of them, and it's always been an experience. And the things they say and the things that happen are just so beautiful. So I thought I gotta build a story around this, which I did, and it's a grandfather and a grandson. And the way I did it was just they're playing catch. What's the deal? How's Vietnam? They're at Fort Dix, New Jersey. It's 1969. The boy's father, the grandfather's son, is in Vietnam. His wife has passed away. He's staying with his daughter-in-law for that year while they're away, and they're kind of helping out being the man of the house. And the whole story is there. And then, there's a thing called military death notifications. So I split that in there. It's brutal, but these military vehicles pull up. We've all seen it, heard about it, and then 2 soldiers get out and ding. So that's all included in there. That's the role of the story. So the acorn there was playing catch with my grandkids, and I included all the stuff. Come on, Pop, throw me grounders, man, and then eating ice cream with them. Hey, am I a good player, Grandpa? And then, with the help of everybody, have them grimacing and go, yeah, you're good. Am I as good as Dad? You're as good, maybe a little better. You work hard. I had that all with the grandkids, so I tried to get that. It's I was crying while I actually had my granddaughter read it the other night, and she got teary-eyed reading it. It was kind of because she knew where I was going with that. But that's how I do it. I get little, I like this. The second volume is a shameless self-promotion here. Second volume, I'm calling Life's a Comedy That's Not Always Funny. And I got about 10 is my number. I don't know why. Just 10's my number. And I got about 5 or 6 in the oven right now that I'm tweaking, and some acorns floating out there. So that's how I do it. I get the basic acorn, the premise, and then in this case, how do I tie it into the Vietnam experience? Woodstock, for instance, is one story in the current book, really Woodstock centric. And I started writing that at the 50th anniversary of Woodstock. And I said, and God knows that's rich with Vietnam tie-ins, right? So I just started tweaking away. I was supposed to go to Woodstock. I was 15, and me and my 2 knucklehead 15-year-old friends, I'm about 2 hours away from it, down on the island, and we were going to hitchhike up. And my father was like, I don't think so. That won't be happening there, Ace. And who's going to fund this enterprise? And you got all that kind of stuff. But I was just so into that. But anyway, the premise was Woodstock. 50 years. So 50 years later, let's get a Woodstock veteran. I heard that there were 2 babies and 2 deaths and so on. Some guy got ran over by a boa or something. I toyed with that. That didn't get in there. But that's, in a nutshell, I'm constantly observing now, pretty much because I'm even more motivated because I'm retired now. I teach a little college. I teach some business part-time, but I'm golfing and thinking and, that sort of thing. So I see something and I say, what's the deal there? What can I make of that? So that's how I go about it. And I tweak it, I tweak it, I tweak it. And as you know, you're a writer, seven lenses later, it's like completely different from where it started, but it's where it gets to where it needs to be. It really does. I'm just so proud. And the Vietnam veterans, man, I hope somehow I'm able to tie this into something to support Vietnam veterans down the road. I'm for those of you watching, I'm a rookie author. I'm a 69-year-old rookie. God bless Morgan and the team at Paper Raven helping me get through this thing. But it's a pretty involved process, and you're my security blanket as we go through. But I'm going to get through this first ride. It comes out July 11th, and I can't wait to see how that goes, and we'll build from there.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for kind of taking us into your process, Kevin. I think that's very helpful. And really, you are a great example of how you've been a writer probably your whole life, and you had a teacher who kind of identified that when you were in 8th grade, and you kept coming back around to the writing. If you were writing in your dorm your first year, and in the military, in the Air Force, you've probably been writing in your head for decades, right? And so now you're coming back around and just being more intentional about it and saying, okay, let's select some of these stories and really craft them. That's one of the amazing things that we love working with you, Kevin, because you really bring the desire for crafting the characters, the stories, the plot lines, the twists, the scenes, and so you do get a little bit of that Kurt Vonnegut kind of vibe going, and suddenly, like, although it's a short story, it's something someone can read, on a weekend, on a plane, something like that. You really are transported into a totally different time and place, and coming to have kind of an empathy for these characters because of that storytelling craft.
Thank you. You make me feel so good. You make me feel so young.
That's right.
Thanks enough.
So is here, and you're like, this sounds like my kind of book. I'm really, I want to dive into some of these stories. The good news is, because the book is launching, we want to get it out to as many folks as possible. We have the ebook on promotion right now. So you can actually go to paperravenbooks.com/the Chianti Chronicles. And Chianti is spelled with a C-H-I. So we also have a link next to this video. You can just click that link and go to the Chianti Chronicles over on Amazon. That ebook, you can download that right away, load it on your Kindle for later. You can also grab a physical version of the book if you like to have that kind of on your nightstand. And if you know someone, if you know a vet, or if you know a family that would especially be touched by these kinds of stories, the stories of soldiers and their loved ones and their families, tag them or get them a copy of the book. I think that's a way that we can really support folks and say, look, I know you've been through something. I can't know what that was, but I do, I'm here for you. And maybe get them a copy of a book, and maybe they feel a little bit more heard, a little more understood. Maybe you read that book too, and then you can really relate to them perhaps more than you ever could before, just because you kind of have been in the eyes and ears of at least a character who represents that. And of course, Kevin, you give us these rich characters that we come to love through the pages of the Chianti Chronicles. So thank you for bringing us these stories and having the courage to really finally do the thing, write them, polish them up, and get them published as a book.
It's been an amazing process. It really has. As you were talking, I'll just give another little teaser, but in one of my stories, a guy is a victim of a hate crime and then goes to the afterlife and winds up sitting with God, having a glass of Chianti and smoking a cigar. And just imagine, folks out there, if you had that opportunity. So that was rich with ideas of what to say and what to think, but the Chianti, you can tie it into anything, man. You can tie it into anything. No doubt.
Well, I love that you always, when we talk in the evenings, Kevin, you've always got your Chianti nearby. It's an authentic part of your author brand.
Well, here you go. To you, to the future readers, and to Paper Raven Books, and most importantly, to our fantastic Vietnam veterans and their families. God bless you, and God bless America. Yes. It's early now. I'm not going to drink this. My wife will kill me. This is just a prop right now.
You're just letting it aerate, for that evening.
Yeah, there you go. For the Mets game tonight. For the Mets game.
That's right, the Mets game. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for being here, for coming and talking with us about the Chianti Chronicles and this particular volume 1. And folks, if this sounds like your kind of book, then you're in for more stories from Kevin. So go ahead and dive into this first volume. There are more Chianti Chronicles coming down the pipeline. And we'd love for you to go ahead and get your copy today while you're here, while you're thinking about it. paperravenbooks.com/the Chianti Chronicles. And again, feel free to share this with anyone who you think might kind of resonate with this type of story. So thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us. And we will see you very soon. Grab your copy today while you're here, while you're thinking about it. All righty. Bye, everybody.